background to give you a brief background of our committee. So our committee is a part of the American Statistical Association Statistical Consulting section. And this committee was created to provide guidance, tools, and support to collaborative statisticians and statistical consultants as they grow in their careers. And also, this committee was established back in 2021. Until then, we have organized different webinars, roundtables at JSM and at major statistical conferences that has helped us to develop our own careers and also foster networking. To give a brief review of today's talk, so today, so as an early career scientist myself, as I went through various trainings, be it doctoral training, be it postdoctoral training, we often think about that whenever we are transitioning from one path to another path, it's all about publications, talks, collaborations, and other stuffs. But many of the opportunities that we have faced has come through real people. It can be your mentor, it can be your collaborator, it can be joining a networking session, or it can be joining a committee. But in real world, sometimes networking feels a little bit intimidated. In today's seminar is about learning real world stories. We have three very renowned panelists today, Dr. Vincent Staggs, Dr. Godwin Wang, and also Dr. Kim Love. They're going to talk about how their career journey has shaped and also how they have made connections in real world. So without further ado, I want to talk about today's agenda. So speakers will give the presentations, and following by that, we'll have our panel discussion. We will have our closing remarks, and also we have a breakout room where you can meet with the speakers for an informal session. You can submit your questions at any time during the presentations, and as well as after the presentation, we have an open Q&A session. Okay, so our first speaker is Dr. Vincent Staggs, who is a principal statistical scientist at IDDI. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. Can you see my colorful screen? Okay.
You look good.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you for a little bit, and thanks to all of you who are tuning in. I see a couple of old friends of mine on here. Hi, Todd Schwartz. I'm wearing my UNC shirt so that you know. And then my good friend Alex Krinovich is on here too. So anyway, I can figure out how to advance my slides. Let's see. There we go. So I'll talk a little bit about myself and my own journey here as we get into this. I wanted to start though with this deeper question about what promotion or success means for you. I can't answer that for you, but you perhaps can or struggle with that question. And I think the earlier in your career that you can sort of start thinking about these deeper questions, the better, because it sets you on a better course, I think, to build the kind of career that you want. So our society has lots of ideas about status and who's more important and who's less important and things like this. But really, I think it's important that each of us brings our own values to bear in thinking about this question. Like, so we're talking about pathways to promotion, but what does promotion mean to you? Is that climbing an academic ladder or a corporate ladder, or is it getting a more prestigious title? Or could promotion mean finding a position that allows you to do more learning, to expand your skill set, to meet more interesting people, to have a greater sense of impact or a greater sense of meaning in what you're doing with your life? I'll come back to this idea of this quote here in a minute about making sure that you've leaned your ladder against the right wall when I talk a little bit about my own story. So what I do now is statistical consulting research around biopharma mostly. And so I work for the statistical consulting firm. We're based in Belgium. We have a US headquarters in Raleigh. And I work with mostly small biopharma companies and meet with CEOs and CMOs, and we do study design and talk about how many patients they need and adaptive designs, all this kind of thing. And then our company also does data management and has a biostats team that does runs the analyses, right, that we design for the trials. I got into this kind of by accident. So my background was in math. First of all, I taught at the university for a couple of years. I went back to school. I got a PhD in quantitative psychology, mostly because I'd started a family and there was a PhD program within commuting distance in quant psych. And so off I went. There wasn't one in statistics or biostats. And I got into biostatistics by accident. I took a job at an academic medical center working on a big nursing grant. And I met a professor in biostatistics who also worked on the grant. He said, "Why don't you apply for an appointment in our department?" And I said, "Okay." And I had never even taken a course in survival analysis. I became an assistant research professor in a biostatistics department, and that off my career went from there. So I climbed the academic promotion ladder. I changed institutions. I went to an academic children's hospital, and I worked with my supervisor there. We set up a biostats and EpiCore that didn't exist, and they needed a director. And so I applied, and they said no. And they did a national search, and they offered the job to somebody. And anyway, they couldn't get anybody to take this job. And so my supervisor called me and said, "Well," she said, "you're already doing the job, like providing leadership to your group and everything. So would you like the job?" And I said, "Okay." And it worked out great. I got promoted to full professor. And then I said, "Now what? What am I doing with my life?" I like getting affirmation and I was externally motivated, right? I knew how to climb this ladder. They sent me a box of chocolates when I made full professor. I felt very important. But then I didn't know what hoop do I jump through next? What am I doing here? Are all these papers that I'm putting my name on, are they making any meaningful impact on patient care or policy or anything like that? Or are they just being buried in journals and cited by one person, that person being me in a later paper? So these are good questions to ask, I think, ahead of time if you can't not wait till you're my age. But this was 3 years ago. So I left academic medicine behind and I switched to industry. And I could talk more about that later in our breakout session or contact me if you want to chat about that more. So I can't answer the big question about what promotion means to you or what success means to you, but I can share some just practical advice about kind of what's worked for me in my career, which I've summarized as sign up and show up. So when I say sign up, the idea here is get involved, and networking can sound kind of challenging, because I imagine oh, you're at JSM and you're trying to hand your business card to total strangers, and it's not what I'm talking about here. I mean, that you can do that too, but what I found is the easiest way to get to know people is just to do something together. And there are lots of opportunities to do this. Rob Podolsky, who I see is on the call, started this networking group for statisticians in healthcare I was part of, which is actually how I got to know the people who invited me to be on this webinar. We've kind of gone different places. Somebody's at NIH now. I'm in industry now. But I keep in touch with these people. These are great contacts to have. I've served on lots of committees. You can offer your services to your IRB. They could probably use a statistician if you don't have one. I worked on a project with Statistics Without Borders. I did a lot of journal reviewing, and there are lots of journals that are published by reputable publishers. I'm not talking about vanity journals and predatory stuff, but reputable publishers, and they could really use your statistical expertise. Some of them don't have a statistics reviewer. Some of them don't know they need one, but you can really make a lot of difference there um, by just bringing your rigor, the rigor of statistics and your knowledge, to help these people out. That led to me getting, I was an associate editor on a couple of editorial boards, even just because I started as a journal reviewer. I will say if you put yourself out there, you run for office, you volunteer to be on a committee or something, there are going to be times when you don't get picked. And that at the time can sting, at least earlier in your career. Just like when I used to like submit a paper, there were times I had to wait like one day just to like open the return, like the email from the publisher. So I was afraid to read it. I was afraid like they rejected it, and it's like, oh, there's all these implications for me as a person and my expertise. I'm an imposter, all this stuff. But what I want to say is like, it's okay. It's going to happen to you. You're okay. It's not a commentary on your value, your worth as a person, or anything like that. Sometimes they're just people who are better fits or they're more qualified or whatever. And I will tell you, like with time over the years, like this stuff doesn't even faze me anymore. Like I'm not afraid to open emails, if I submit a paper or something. They don't pick me, I don't care. You get over that. So that's sign up, and I'll talk a little bit about show up. What I mean by this is just sort of be present and engage as a human being. So bring yourself, not just your knowledge. I like to help other people feel like they're welcome, they're included, and they're valued. I don't know anybody who doesn't want to feel welcomed and included and valued. I can guarantee you, if you're a statistician and you're at JSM or wherever, and you're feeling self-conscious or socially anxious, or you feel like an imposter, I guarantee you, you're not the only one feeling that. Um, and armed with that knowledge that you're not atypical, that's just very normal, I think, especially for statisticians, you can just kind of charge in and be yourself and start conversations with strangers. Smiling is underappreciated, I think. I think it helps set people at ease. Um, in terms of like, I read through, by the way, I'm trying to address some of the questions people submitted, but if you're not sure what to say, but you want to speak up and contribute, I like to ask questions. This also works if you're starting conversations with strangers. I was at an ophthalmology conference a couple weeks ago as a statistician, not an ophthalmologist, not my scene, but everywhere I went, I just practiced starting conversations with strangers. Hotel elevator, sitting eating my salad at the hotel bar, at the conference. I would say like, "Oh, I like your colorful umbrella," or like, how's the coffee? Just something. It doesn't need to be meaningful or deep. It's not the easiest thing in the world for me to do, but I will say it does get easier with time because, like, I talk to people in airports and just wherever I am. Because what happens is again and again and again and again and again, I just find that other human beings are happy to connect, happy to say hello to you and smile back or whatever. And it's all the positive experiences just sort of reinforced my desire to do that. And then finally, I just wanted to revisit the idea of sign up and say, some people asked about sort of soft skills, interpersonal skills. Most of us can identify like an area or skill like where we'd like to improve, we think we could do better at. I mean, if you can't find like some trusted, gentle person who really cares about you, like a colleague or your spouse or whomever, and they can probably point you in the right direction. And what I want to say about all of these different kind of skills is that they can be learned and practiced. They're literally books, classes, you can get coaching, you can join a practice group, whatever it is that you feel like is an area you want to shore up. The opportunities are out there and you can get better at it. Thank you very much.
Nice, nice. So, let me go. Thank you, Vincent, for the lovely presentation. Next, we have Dr. Godwin Wong, who is a statistical methodology lead at the Roche-Genentech. Godwin, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Let me see how I can. I'm using Google Slides, so hopefully this will work. Let's see. waiting. Really appreciate the messages that Vincent had for us. Some really resonated with me, so thank you for that, Vincent. Is this full screen now?
Yes, you're good.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. So, does anyone in the audience recognize the movie the scene is from? The beacons are lit. Type it in the chat if you recognize it. Mulan, yes. Mulan. Charlotte, you seem very confident. Which movie do you think this is from? Gondor Calls for Aid. Frank Shu said Lord of the Rings. Correct. Yeah, so this is the part of the movie. This is the second of the trilogy from Lord of the Rings where the human kingdom, Gondor, realizes that the evil army of Sauron is about to attack them. They can't defend themselves alone, so they call for aid. And the way they call for aid is they light these beacons. These are essentially wood piles. They light them, and once one beacon is lit, the next beacon, a far distance away, sees it. The soldier there lights it up as well, and eventually you have a whole sequence of beacons lit all the way from Gondor to Rohan. Rohan makes the critical decision to respond, muster their army, and respond to Gondor's call for aid. So today, the time that I have with you, I wanted to share some of the beacons that I intentionally built and lit at two critical junctures of my career. My punchlines, takeaways I hope you'll come away with is when we're talking about networking, try to give people a reason to connect with you. This isn't an immediate reason, it's something that you build over time. And then second, surround yourself with people you admire and trust. Not everyone you may admire or not everyone you can trust, but like Vincent said, give it a try. Some things will stick, some things will not. But over time, if you keep trying, you'll find a small group of people that you can. So my story starts about 10 years ago. I was in the shoes of probably some of you in the audience today, about to graduate from my program and then entering into the workforce for the first time. So this kind of gives away my age. But my first job was across the Charles River in Cambridge, Massachusetts at Takeda Pharmaceuticals. My first job was a half clinical trial statistician, half times what we call a statistical methodologist, kind of like an academic dash consultant, but sitting within industry. So that was my first job, and I had the pleasure, my first manager really encouraged me to just be curious. She made sure, said, go take the time, you're new, take the time to turn every stone, don't take anything for granted. Whatever we do in industry, whatever statistical method, analysis, design we do, question it. Why do we do this? What are assumptions that go behind it? When does it fail? And if it fails, what do we do about it? And specifically, she asked me to be curious about survival. So from early on, I was really encouraged to have that mindset, which is something I try to continue on for my colleagues and myself. The second thing that I was intentional very early on is being strategic about where I spent my time. I went into industry because I wanted to have a certain work-life balance. I didn't want to work all the time, but I also really wanted to make an impact on patients, and I really love statistics, if you will. And so I wanted to make a contribution to the statistics or community. So really, I want to do a lot of things, work-life balance, work. Um, but what that meant was I need to be strategic, be intentional about where I spent my time, not to overwork, but what I do really make an impact in certain ways. And so some mini stories I wanted to share with you how I was specifically intentional. The first story is with Alex Dmitrienko. So this happened about 2 years into my job at Takeda. The clinical trial I was part of wanted to change our study design. And so we reached out to Alex. He was this external subject matter expert he used to be in the pharma industry, but now he's a consultant. So we reached out to him for feedback. And the way I approached this was not a usual consultation where we could have easily said, this is our problem. What do you think? Give us a solution and done. Uh, the angle that I took on was I have this chance to work with Alex. He's the subject matter expert in multiple testing. So I poured over his papers, his slides. He's very generous with his teaching and just really learned as much as I could about multiple testing in my interactions with him. And what ended up happening is the strategy that we went with was something that I proposed, whose operating characteristics was something that I proved. And Alex essentially kind of checked off. He double checked my work, like, oh yeah, this proof for type 1 error control is correct. The strategy is sound, and I'm happy to support you when you go to FDA for your interaction. But so it was a very collaborative, intellectually stimulating opportunity to get to know him and for him to get to know me. And you'll see how this comes back later as a positive benefit that I didn't proactively seek out. Another way that I try to be strategic was as an industry statistician, you're not required to publish. So anytime you do, it's nice. It's different from academia. But again, I love statistics. So encouraged by my manager, I really dove into survival analysis. I found a gap in literature, and I spent about 4 years writing a paper that I could semi be proud of. And again, this is unusual in industry. But what happened is I can't remember if Kevin reached out to me or if I reached out to Kevin, but he's this very established statistician at Merck. He's just much more seasoned subject matter expert. But him and I, again, connected on this intellectually stimulating level. For him, he was interested in my paper. For me, I was just interested to talk to him. He had made a big impact in his company and his area of work. So again, it was just a very friendly relationship that we start to build. I had breakfast, or I think I had breakfast with him twice at a conference after we had talked a couple times. The last mini story is with Casper Ruffenbach, and so this comes to early 2020. This is pandemic, and so what happened in the pharma industry is we quickly realized that the pandemic and the disruption it caused would impact clinical trials. So a number of us clinical trial statisticians across different companies got together to discuss what do we think, how do we think clinical trials are going to be impacted, and what should we do about it in terms of design, in terms of analysis. It was a very intense month or 2 months. I can't remember how long, but Casper, myself, and two other co-authors, we sat down and wrote a paper in that really short span of time, essentially establishing a position for pharma statisticians. It's an incredible learning experience, very intense. But again, another way that I was very strategic, again, that was pandemic. We all had our work issues, personal issues, but I found a little bit of time to say no to certain work and ask my company, can I work on this cross-industry paper? And they said, okay, so that's where I spent a lot of my time. And it was a great learning experience again. And the nice silver lining out of this, again, it wasn't pre-planned, but eventually when I wanted to make the move from East Coast to West Coast, the hiring manager for Roche-Genentech, well, he happened to be acquainted or good friends, or the manager for the connections I already had. So Alex is good friends with Alan. Kevin is a close acquaintance with Alan, and Casper reported into Alan. So all three kind of, with the close collaboration they have with him, vouched for me, but also essentially helped me get my job under Alan for my first couple of years here. So happy kind of coincidence, but again, kind of goes to show that I didn't pre-plan it, but when you really show up, when you're strategic, people will notice. When you do good work, people will notice, and their network becomes your network. So from there, I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. And most recently, at the end of last year, I stepped into management, actually the leadership position for my immediate group of statistical methodology for the first time. I hadn't considered wanting to step into management, at least not for a couple years. But long story short, my company went through a significant reorg. So the opportunity was presented to me. And so what I wanted to share in the last part is what made me semi-comfortable to take this dive. And so the what made me semi-comfortable is by this time, 4 years into my career, actually no, 9 years into my career, I had surrounded myself with enough people that pushed me to do and be better, people that I admired and trusted. So I mentioned Casper and Alan. They're a big reason why I joined Roche-Genentech to learn from them. But they also ended up being people that I found that I could really trust with, technical, not just technical, but even like career development. They gave me a lot of advice and suggestions along the way. What I also ended up doing is I found a mentor outside of my company, which I would recommend, whatever institution you are. It's a bit more independent. But here in the Bay Area, we have this community called the Biotech Bay Area Biotech Pharma Statistics Workshop, BBSW for short. So kind of to Vincent's point, when you're part of a community, naturally you can build a network through there. When you work together, you build your network. So BBSW is a great opportunity for you to they have many positions for you to contribute to build this community. And through that, I got plugged in, and they have their own mentor-mentee program. So my mentor for the last 2 years has was Cheeto now, but before he was the head of data science at BioMarin. And so Cheeto and I connected. You'd be surprised how many people are willing later in their careers to come back and mentor and kind of lift up the next generation. And Cheeto is certainly one of them. We connected. He's a Christian. I'm a Christian. So on that level, we connected as well, trying to make impact through our work. But long story short, kind of Casper, Alan, Cheeto, and many others kind of became kind of my small circle of trusted advisors, if you will, people that I call for aid whenever I light my beacon, whether it's technical expertise or really career development. And so it's not that I stepped into leadership knowing that I could do it. It's more I stepped into leadership knowing that if I made a mistake or if I'm about to encounter something difficult, I know that I have a group of people and I can call out to for advice. So that's my little last bit. Give people a reason to connect with you and surround yourself with people you admire and trust. So with that, if you'd like to connect with me, here's my LinkedIn. Here's that link again to bbsw.org. I hope this was some pieces of it were useful to you, and I look forward to the conversation later.
Thank you, Godwin, for sharing your insights. It's been really helpful. Uh, next in line, we have Dr. Kim Love, who is an independent statistical collaborator at KR Love QCC. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you so much. And while I'm getting my screen shared, let's see, replace current share. There we go. I wanted to say, I focused in, mine and private practice, and can you all see the presentation view?
You're good.
Okay, great. I really focused on private practice because I was thinking, this will be kind of what will be a little different for me versus the other speakers. But as I was listening to both of their presentations, I think we have more in common when it comes to networking than we do things that are different. So I'll probably echo a lot of the things that both Vince and Godwin said in their presentations. But I am in private practice. I technically have my own company, but it's just me, so that's really more of a legal thing. I am my own company. And I just want to give a little background about me and how I got to where I am, because I think that's important background for understanding how I view networking and also how I view career advancement, which is kind of the focus of today. So, as I mentioned, I am an independent statistical collaborator. I have chosen those terms carefully, but if you want to refer to me as a statistical consultant, that's absolutely fine. That is basically what I do. And I want to talk about my previous positions and also how I found them and how I came around to where I was. So I want to make it clear that I did not always have this goal of being an independent practitioner. I honestly didn't really know what I want to do. And that's why I got a PhD because I just wasn't done yet after I got my master's. So I just stayed. But I knew kind of as soon as I started in statistics that I wanted to have a position where I could help solve real world problems. I knew I was not going to be a big theoretician. I wanted to actually get my hands on some things and provide answers. I was that person that loved the word problems in like my first stats class because I felt like I was solving a problem. So, of course, when I started, and I'm going to highlight the things that kind of led to me being a independent collaborator. When I did my PhD, I happened to be at a university that had it required you to do part of your assistantship in their statistical consulting center. And so even though I kind of just did the bare requirement there, I think that's where I got my first exposure to what it was like to work with people who are not statisticians and, kind of help solve problems on the fly. And I did enjoy it, although it was not my focus at the time. I did enjoy it. And I do think it helped set me up to have this skill set later on. When I left there, And I think I'm going to just say this, again, I just kind of found this opportunity. So we're talking about how you find jobs. This was a job that I was connected with through one of the advisors on my PhD committee who was outside of the department in geographic information systems. My dissertation touched on that topic. I took a class with him. He knew people at the University of Georgia in their forestry department. They were looking for a statistician, and it happened to work out. So that I would say this is more an opportunity that I was open to, rather than something that I was like, I really need to do this, but it worked out wonderfully. So I was a postdoc slash research coordinator. I was the only statistician in a small group researching wood quality. And that really was a trial by fire way to learn how to talk to people who did not have a statistical background. I was constantly confusing to them for the first year that I was there, and we eventually figured it out. And I would say that was a massive step toward the skill set that I developed to do what I do now. And then finally, in my last position that I had before I went private, I was the associate director of the University of Georgia's Statistical Consulting Center. And I would say networking also played a big part in this role in kind of a weird way. I interviewed for this position when it opened up. I did not get it. So it was another 2 years before that person left. But because I had that interview, they had liked me during that interview. They just thought the other person was a better fit at the time. So they asked me to interview again and they hired me. So I think that's maybe a good lesson right there. A failed interview is not necessarily a failed interview. So there's lots of ways that networking works and that people remember you. So even opportunities that you think did not go well, sometimes they go better than you thought at the time. So just something to keep in mind. But all of these things really were things that I did because I knew somebody. So networking, looking back, networking was very important. I wasn't thinking of it as networking at the time, which is something I'll talk about later. So who are my clients? Just so you know, I have that academic background. I still focus mostly on academic clients, kind of what I know, and I do well there. So I work with students, I work with research labs, I work with independent faculty researchers. I do have some government and nonprofit clients. I do have some corporate clients, but they are not my bread and butter. Honestly, I really only work with corporate clients if they're people I really enjoy working with. I'm just much more comfortable kind of in the academic area. So I wanted to talk about what is the purpose of networking to me in my position. I really technically work only with myself. That's not true in reality. I work for all my clients are my bosses in a sense, but at least I get to choose who they are and, why I'm working with them. So networking in terms of career advancement for me, and there are other reasons I network as well, but in terms of career advancement for me, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about, like what career advancement really is. And I have to figure that out before I can figure out how to network to make that happen. So, because I work by myself, there are no promotions for me. There's no salary increases in the typical sense. If I want to increase my salary, I need to earn more money. And then I think sometimes people like I get occasionally like the cold email from a headhunter, I guess, who's like, "Oh, I saw you're a consultant. Would you like to go work for this company?" And I think there is like this underlying idea that sometimes people are consultants because they're between jobs and they're trying to scrape by. That is not what I'm doing. Like, I really love what I do. I've been doing it for 10 years now. I'd love to do it for another 20. Like, I'm doing what I want to do. I'm not interested, at least at present, at changing jobs. So these are not career advancements that work for me. So what is a career advancement? So I was trying to think like, what are the things that these things are meant to do? Like when you get a promotion, when you get a salary increase, what are these really doing that's supposed to be keeping you there? So one thing is, if you're in a job, like the eventual idea for a lot of people, not everybody, but the idea is to maybe keep moving toward retirement. Like that is a big goal that no one is taking care of for me. And promotions, salary increases, those things do help you toward being able to retire one day. So for me, career advancement is making progress toward retirement. Um, I think another thing that promotions and salary increases do is they maintain or increase your profit. I say profit because it's a business, but really that your income, while maybe decreasing your effort a little bit. Like there has to be some balance. Like I could do, twice the work and earn I want to say twice the money, but I don't feel it would work out like that. But I could do twice the work and make more money, but that's not feasible in reality. So how do I decrease my effort or keep my effort the same while maintaining or increasing profit? And then what also like a lot of the things with promotions and salary increases, they give you increased job satisfaction. So if I can make myself happier in what I'm doing, then that to me is also career advancement. If I can put something in place that makes me feel more satisfied, and it's not temporary, that's a career advancement. So as I was thinking about, how do I network to help me with these things, I really have two directions that I have to go to make those happen. And so one of those is staying professionally relevant. I don't have built-in colleagues, I have to find them. And so it's kind of like the things you would talk about with colleagues, the things that you might be informed by upper management about what's happening in your field. I have to meet the people and go find the things that tell me about that. So that's one reason I network is just to stay professionally relevant. And the other reason I network is to maintain my client base. And I suspect that's where a lot of people will have more questions for me. If I don't address everything here, of course, we'll have our question session, then we'll have our breakout room. So please feel free to ask me anything there. But do have to maintain my client base. I have to network with people who will be my clients. And so, in terms of staying professionally relevant, what are the tools that I use? And I want to mention something. I'm gonna make this point again at the end, but something I realized, like, and actually this came up in Vince and Godwin's talks as well. Networking is not something that you do really quickly when you need something. Like, you don't just go, oh, I want to switch jobs or I want to get promoted. Let me really quick network and figure out how to do that. Networking is something that I think for many people just kind of happens slowly over time. And you have to be open to those opportunities when they come up. You can't network and then forget your network when you don't need anything necessarily. So how do I do this? Well, I did want to talk about professional organizations. For me, this is like where I know I can go to find people who do what I do, and not necessarily people who do what my clients do. So I have done my fair share of leadership and volunteer roles. And we talked about like running for an elected position is intimidating and you don't always win. I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, that's fine. But, at first it's really difficult to put yourself out there. But there are volunteer roles pretty much anywhere you go, even if it's something as simple as you're part of a meeting and someone says, hey, someone needs to do this. Who wants to do it? When no one raises their hand, raise your hand. I think that's really how you get involved and people get to know you. And there's all kinds of volunteer roles. There's more front-facing ones and there's more behind-the-scenes ones that, you might be more comfortable with. So that's one thing I've done. Discussion boards. Some groups, these are more active than others, but keep an eye on discussion boards. And if something comes up that, you can help with, or that you have an opinion on. People love opinions. If you just want to jump in and give your opinion, people will start to see your name and know who you are. And conferences. Conferences for me, they're not really a place where I go to necessarily meet new people. I have occasionally met new people at conferences, but this is a place for me to meet people who are part of my network and see them in person again and kind of reconnect. So this conferences are a great place for me to like renew my connections with the people that I know. So I do try to attend at least one conference every year. I wanted to talk about LinkedIn. We haven't really talked about social media. I'm really bad at using it. I'm just gonna be straightforward. Like I do it all wrong. I make a few posts for like a few weeks and I'm really active and then I don't post anything for 6 months, which is exactly the opposite of how you should do it. So don't do what I do. But I do occasionally pop in on LinkedIn. I try to make posts that are helpful rather than like I need something kinds of posts. So if I have some, right now, for example, I'm giving a free webinar series. That's not really a networking, not in a career advancement kind of way, but I'm giving a free webinar series right now, kind of aimed at people who need to work with a statistician. And I'll post and say, hey, if you want to come to this, please come to this. And I think just putting myself out there, on LinkedIn, making sure people do see my name. People that are my colleagues circulate these posts. So even if not a single person comes to them because of my LinkedIn post, people remember I'm alive. So I think that's a good thing. And occasionally I'll share my work. If there's something I'm like, hey, this was really cool. Here's something I did. And then finally, I don't want to forget about direct email contact. This is not a way that I meet new people for the most part. But this is a way that every once in a while, if I haven't heard from my network, if there's somebody that I'm like, I haven't talked to so and so in a while, I will just email them and say, hey, how's everything going? So I think it's really important, again, not to forget your network just when you're not in a moment where you need something or you're trying to advance something in some way. And then when you do, they're there. But again, like I said, this is a slow process. It is not a network real quick process. And over time, it builds up, and then you just have to maintain, which is much easier for me. And then in terms of my client base, I don't have, I was like, I have a lot to say about this, but I also don't because everything for me with my client base is word of mouth. Um, it's not just that, yes, it works the best. I don't advertise. I have some thoughts on what I would do if I felt like my client base was declining, but I do kind of some things I do with this. I ask people how they heard about me. That is one thing that I've started doing. When you set up an appointment with me, you fill out a little form, and I do ask, how did you hear about me? And virtually everything is, a lot of it is I already worked with you before. So that's the primary thing at this point, probably. But then there's someone at my university recommended you to me, or what I saw you. There's a nursing school that I work with, and a lot of that is I saw you on their Facebook page. So they talk about me on their Facebook page, and I think they mostly say nice things because people keep coming to me. But that's how that works for me. And part of the reason that I do this, so there is gentle encouragement. I know some people do this. I do not. I do not reach out and say, hey, do you have anything new for me to work on? But some people do that and it works great. If I worked with someone over the years for a long time and I know we had something on the back burner, I might reach out to them. If someone says, hey, I have some friends in my class who are looking for some help too, then I will say, yes, please pass on my name. I would love to work with them. So I'd say I do give gentle encouragement to people to reach out to me or to send someone to me, but I don't try to overwhelm them. And then I think this is actually something Godwin talked about a little bit is intentionality. So I like to say, yeah, everything's about opportunity, but I also do need to be intentional a little bit. Sometimes I end up with a client that I'm not particularly fond of. And is that going to help me reach my long-term goals? Like sometimes it's a struggle or some, for whatever reason. I don't encourage them to work with me again. So this is kind of like making sure that I'm moving in the direction I want. I don't tell them I won't work with you again, but I remember just to give you an example, earlier on, I had somebody I worked with that did not want to pay me for some work that I did. And they said, but it's okay because I'll give you referrals. That's a big red flag because who someone who doesn't pay me is going to refer me to is other people who don't pay me. So I was basically like, no, thank you. So especially when you're starting out, make sure that you are making connections that are connections you want. I do like to be open to opportunity, but I also like to recognize that not every single person I make a contact with is going to be somebody worth holding on to. I feel like I relearned that lesson every time I switched positions, but sometimes that's the fact. So I'm going to just reiterate a few key points. One of them is networking is slow and not fast. Just be open to opportunities as you go. If even if it's not something that you see it's going to benefit you right now, that's not necessarily the reason that you do or don't do something. It's just building a network of people that do the same things you do and might, I honestly don't even do this because I'm like, this might be a future opportunity. It's just part of, my creating a professional circle for myself, which I enjoy having. But on the other hand, be intentional. Don't don't network in directions that are not the ones that you want. If it's not going to do what you want in the context of your career, you don't need to hang on to that. And I guess my simple rule for networking with clients that everything I mentioned about word of mouth comes down to is I contact others the way that I want to be contacted. Like if you think about that, if you get, emails from people that are offering you things you don't want, not only are you not going to work with them, you're probably going to block their email address. So that's a very obvious example of what maybe and what not to do, but think about the way that people reach out to you when you feel welcoming of that and when you say, yeah, this is cool. I want to get to know this person or whatever. that's probably the way you should be trying to reach out to other people. And for me, that happens gradually over time. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Kim, for sharing your story. So today's discussion reminded us about about how cool networking can be. So it's not about just asking for formal events or asking for referrals at multiple times. It is about building genuine relationships, staying curious, following up, and contributing to professional communities. With that in mind, I would love to um, open the stage for the panel discussion. So we will start off a few questions from the chat. And if someone has any other question, you can put it in chat, or they can unmute themselves and ask the questions towards the speaker.
First one comes from Courtney, who considers himself relatively introverted, but extroverted enough to put this in chat. They want to know how important or essential is it for them to be visually seen in their organization for opportunities in the future.
So I'll give a quick answer to that. I don't have an organization in the sense of like a business, but when I think about the ASA and the opportunities that I've gotten through the ASA, I did find it was a little bit important to show my face at the same time as making some kind of contribution. I think once people can put together your face with your name and some things you've done, that's going to make a much bigger impression than only seeing your name or maybe only seeing your contributions. At least that's how it's worked for me. Other people may have different experiences.
Thank you.
I'll chime in here. I have mostly worked for organizations, large pharma to be exact. So, short answer, I would say it's actually, if you think about going into industry, it's quite important. Um, I think the most eye-opening for me is having stepped into management in the last half a year or so. Um, I remember looking at the spreadsheet because we've been hiring a lot within the company, uh, bringing people from across, maybe internally. There's internal candidates, external candidates, but there was a spreadsheet where I got to see comments, feedbacks on the candidates, especially the internal ones. These are peers that I've known for years. What really struck me is you kind of have a sense of um, people's kind of with their strengths and areas of growth. And the way that I think about it is their technical expertise, but also their soft skills, if you will. And we often say, your technical skills bring you to a certain place, but soft skills is also uncaps you to another level of your career. And that spreadsheet really struck me because I literally saw that appear where someone was applying for a higher position, and the comments could be half positive, where this person technically is very strong, but they are missing a certain quality or another quality for them to take the next step. So it was hard for me to see that cap written out in words, but it really put into so this is what I kind of thought about when you were saying, Courtney. Well, you are visible in some way or not. Either you're visible as active in a meeting or visible as not active in a meeting. But I understand us statisticians, we tend to be introverted. So the advice I did want to give you is that, it's don't our society kind of paints extroverted as a definite plus over introverted. Try to find, I'm semi-introvert as well. First, find ways to recharge after you go out into the public. It's exhausting. I think a lot of us get that here. But my advice is also, work behind the scenes. You're probably, if you're like me, you're more comfortable on those one-on-one conversations. Networking, a lot of what I do is one-on-one conversations. I don't like networking in a large group. This conversation right here, I needed lots of coffee and tea and talking to my wife to prep for, as an example. But really try to understand yourself and tap into that. Find a mentor that is introverted. There are many executives who are introverted who will tell you, I'm not comfortable up here. but I learned how to be comfortable. So find someone that can inspire you to take that next step if you want to, be more visible in the way that our society wants us to be to climb. But figure out like how can you do that, but stay still true to yourself without exhausting yourself. That's what I would say to that.
Thank you.
Vincent, I don't know if you wanted to address that or if we should go on to the next question.
Oh, I think those are good responses. We can go on.
So the next one comes from Alex, she points out that a lot of you have talked about saying yes to opportunities, but what about saying no and turning things down gracefully?
That's difficult for me. I heard someone say once, like you have to protect your yes with your no's. And you can only say yes to so many things. But for me, it was just like everything else. I just got comfortable with it by practicing. Eventually, you get used to, and what surprised me was people respected my boundaries when I drew them. And if someone doesn't respect their boundaries, then that's not someone you probably want to work with. So
It's different when the request comes from someone that's a peer versus someone that's maybe above you in a hierarchy. It can be very different to say no to somebody who's asking you to do something who's up here, even if it's, not part of your job. It's very different depending on where that pressure is coming from. But, if it's a peer and I have to say no, or a client and I have to say no, um, people are like, just like Vince said, people are more understanding than you maybe think they will be. And a lot of my attitude in volunteer groups has been, this is a volunteer thing for all of us. We all only have so much time, and just helping other people remember we're all in the same boat. And, maybe I can't do this thing, but I also know sometimes they can't do this other thing too. So it helps.
The last piece I'll contribute is I think, at least for me, it depended on the stage of my career. Early in my career, I definitely said more yes. When I joined Roche, wanted to get to know my different colleagues. So anyone that reached out to me with a question, I basically said yes. I sat down with them or had virtual calls and listened to their problems. But really quickly, maybe 2 years in, the feedback that I got was from leadership was, we know you're doing great work, but we don't really know you for that one thing. Like, is there anything particular that you're focused on? So it was a clear call for me to start saying no to some things. And the only thing I would say, I like what Vincent said. You'd be surprised how some people are very respectful of your boundaries. The last piece is, I try to, when I turn down opportunities now, I look to, you mentioned low value activities. Um, I try to think of someone who might actually benefit from that opportunity. Maybe someone who is earlier on in their career. And so I'm like, hey, I don't have the capacity. And I'll talk to that person. That person, I kind of have an idea they might be interested. But hey, this person wants to do it. Why don't you? So it's not a absolute no. People will come back to me for my network, but it doesn't cost me very much to do some connection. So that's just additional little tidbit.
Rebecca, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. I thought I would just raise my hand. We're in a networking session, and I just wanted to ask specifically Kim if there's a best way to get to know you better. I have reached out, and I know that you all are very high profile, so for the other panelists as well, what's the best way to try and reach someone who might be higher profile within the ASA or for you as panelists so that we can get to know you better?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think one thing for me is and this is honestly, like, I know this is a flaw of mine, is I have a LinkedIn profile. You can technically find my phone number, but like I very, very much prefer to be contacted by email. And like, I pretty much say like email's the best way to contact me. And I really mean that. So like, I'm very, very happy for anyone to send me an email and I will reply to it. Sometimes I ignore it if you just happen to reach out to the wrong one, I might ignore it and it's not on purpose. I know like, especially I'm running a business by myself, I don't have
Mhm.
anyone to help me with that. Email is a great way to contact me. And I also want to say, I seem high profile, but honestly, I'm not being flooded with emails from people trying to get my attention. So please, just for me specifically, feel free to just send me an email and introduce yourself.
Oh, great.
That'd be a great
Do
way
you
to
have a
be.
specific email that's
Yeah,
best?
yeah. Let me put it in the chat. Yep.
And again, I was very interested in meeting Kim, but I'd be open to hearing how the other panelists, like what's the best way if you are active on LinkedIn? Will you reply or is it better to reach out in a different way? So thank you.
I'm on LinkedIn a lot lately, and I accept connection requests from nearly anyone with some sort of statistical connection, or if they're a professor somewhere or something. Yeah. I guess I might just add, I one of the favorite parts of my job as a consultant is I really enjoy being able to share my knowledge to help other people be successful. It's like, I want your trial to succeed. I want your treatment for glaucoma to succeed, whatever. And even if I can't help, I'm always like trying, like kind of like Godwin said, like trying to think like who could help this person or something. Um, it's so I'm by nature just sort of hesitant to like, especially cold call somebody I don't know at all. Like I'm I don't like Stevenson, let's say, like or Frank Harrell. Like I don't hey Frank, how's it going? Like I don't do that kind of cold sort of reach out to people like that to ask them questions or anything. But in general, like I just find that most people like enjoy helping if they have time and are happy to answer questions. And if they can't, they're usually polite and saying like, I don't know, or I can't help you. So
Yeah,
Um,
sometimes I think people are going to say no if you ask for something, and that's also okay. Like, I think one thing is getting comfortable with it when people say no or I don't have time. That's okay. That they're not saying that they're rejecting you. And I think the older you get and the more experience you have, the more you realize that it's not, you shouldn't feel bad or embarrassed because you tried.
so as you can see, there's a lot of questions in chat. So we're sort of gonna pick and choose, but I think one that's applicable to all three of our presenters comes in from Caitlin, who asks, um, from transitioning from academia into industry, what are the network opportunities and what did you do to gain traction for that?
that's that's a really good question. And I'll be honest, in my case, I got my job by applying for it. I didn't know anyone associated with IDDI at all. I mean, the rest of my team is in Europe. Um, and they saw my CV and gave me a chance, and I was very upfront with them coming into it and said, I'm coming out of academic medicine. I've not done regulatory consulting where you're trying to design trials that FDA or EMA is going to approve, and is going to be a learning curve for me. And I want to learn. That's why I'm looking at this job. And that turned out to be a perfect opportunity for me. In terms of like networking, what helped me or could have helped me in theory was that I knew physicians from years of collaborating who also had left academia and they've gone into industry, or former students. I almost took a job at FDA. I have a former student there. Um, but in several cases, I've applied for jobs, and I didn't end up taking those jobs, but I applied for some jobs because a physician or somebody else I knew gave me an inside referral to a pharma company, for example. Um, I, but beyond that, I don't know. It's kind of tricky. I've been asked that before. Or somebody's like, think about switching, and I didn't really know what to say. Is it's typically those job ads will say like, well, it depends on what level you're coming in at, but often it's like you need like 7 years or 10 years experience specifically in biopharma or biotech. And I didn't have that. I had 0 years experience in biopharma. So yeah, I got lucky.
Godwin, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, I'm okay on this one. I'm trying to think of some of the difficult questions on the chat.
Okay.
So,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
Do you have
No,
more to
I was
add?
going to say I didn't exactly transfer to industry, and I don't want to take up a ton of time, but yeah, definitely what I did in academia was a little different too. I was not a tenure track faculty member, but definitely what I did in academia and the connections that I made there, and then also the skills that I learned there actually directly convinced me that I could become a private practitioner. So yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to take the next one from, apologize if I say your name wrong, Naren. How would you approach networking as someone who's very early in their career or recent PhD? Maybe just a couple ideas.
I, as I mentioned, I was super not intentional early on in my career. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So for me, it was just kind of being open to opportunities that, yeah, honestly, that my advisors were, I think having a good advisor during your PhD is really important. But if you've already missed that boat and you don't feel very connected to your advisor, um, who else did you work with? Who else do you know? Ask people that you already know what opportunities they're aware of, and where they think you'd be a good fit. Yeah, hopefully you connected with some faculty member enough that that's always a good place to start.
So here's sort
Some
of
really
a,
good
sorry,
questions in the chat that I'm just not sure how to answer. It's pretty challenging. So I'm not ignoring them. I'm just
and
pretty.
Abby, I don't know what time you wanted to start the breakout groups.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of the time where we should move forward with our breakout room. So thank you to the panelist for giving us such great insights. With that in mind, I would like to thank everyone who have joined today's meeting and participated through your questions today. We hope this session gave you some good, useful ideas for maintaining and building connections as you move or transition to a new career. I would also like to thank the P2P members. So we are enjoying our 5 years this time. I would like to thank our chair, Dr. Lee Zhang. And if you want to join our group, please email back to us. Again, I would like to thank the ASA consulting section for organizing and supporting the event. Before we conclude, please remember to complete the post-webinar evaluation. It will be sent to you over email as well, and if not, you can scan the QR code provided over here. We also have a few more networking events. So we have the 2026 JSM coming up in August. So there are a few of the sessions that have been organized by the consulting section as well as the P2P committee. We also have an informal meetup over JSM. So if you can reach back to us, we can also set up some time to meet with you and do networking. There are also a few networking resources. They are ASA sponsored. For example, our P2P committee, there are a few more of the ASA consulting section. And also there is this quantitative staff network where you can go there and meet with new people and do statistical collaborations. With that in mind, I would like to thank everyone who joined the meeting today. And I would ask everyone to join the breakout rooms. So there will be 4 breakout rooms. So those who want to talk with the P2P members, they can stay in the main room. And there will be 3 breakout rooms for the 3 speakers. I hope you enjoy your talk over there. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Vince and Godwin. We're parting ways now. It was good to be part of this with you.
I'm sending you
Likewise,
an
it's
email
been
to connect
awesome.
right now, Kim, so that I know that
Fabulous.
you have
Good. Okay,
bandwidth for networking. So
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Thank you to our speakers. We have 3 breakout rooms. So each speaker, can you just go to one of them? And then so the audience, if they like to talk to you guys, they can go to the breakout room.